Hi, I'm Karin Holley. I'm a certified leadership and team coach, and I support high achieving leaders to improve their performance, their relationships, and well being. I believe that if people feel more balanced, more confident, and have more joy in their lives, this has a ripple effect on their communities and their environments, bringing more peace and more sustainability. To this end, I have asked Wieneke Maris to join me today in my Authentic Pathways interview series, where I talk with inspirational educational leaders and professionals who are leading the lives that are true to who they are as people and their values. And as a result, having an impact that they want to have, but to do it in such a way that leads to sustainable high performance. So that's what I like to talk about. It's how can we achieve our goals and have this positive impact, but do it sustainably. So Vinik and I have that word in common, sustainability. We approach it slightly differently, but we used to work together as geography teachers. I have had a passion for sustainability from the geography perspective as well for years. Vinica is someone who I find is incredibly positive, always sees the good in people and situations. And her love for nature and sustainability has been like the green thread throughout her life. She has been a geography teacher and a global issues network coordinator at the International School of The Hague. And there she aims to integrate sustainability structurally into education. So I'm very curious to hear, Vinica, what do you mean with this structural and whole school approach? So we'll get to that. Wieneke is active with Teachers for Climate and as a sused.org lead for the Netherlands. And in 2019, she was awarded, drumroll, the Sustainable Teacher of the Year for her work inside and outside the classroom. And in the school year 2022 and 2023, she traveled through Europe searching for inspirational examples of education for sustainability. And so, one of the outcomes of this journey has been the Sustainability Accelerator that she started with colleagues from Spain, Germany, Portugal, and Belgium to support schools in structurally integrating sustainability in this whole school approach. So, as a teacher trainer, she enjoys supporting teachers and making education for a better and more sustainable world a reality. She ends with a quote for her bio, which I think is really beautiful. I believe that education has a big role to play in addressing the ecological and climate crisis our world faces today. It is a journey of transformation. Now, I want to highlight that word, and we're going to come back to it, Vinica. Thank you for being here and engaging in this conversation with me today. A big welcome to Farhana. So nice to see you as well. All right, let's get started. So before we go into your work today, Vinica, and over the past couple of years, I would love to hear from you. What was this initial spark of where is this passion coming from for the planet, for sustainability, the climate, and then really thinking about how you can integrate this into the classroom. But initially, where did your passion start?
Yeah, thank you, Karen, and thank you for your kind words. It's really nice to be here. And I think that initial passion started way back, way before I became a teacher. I think as a child, I was happiest when I was in nature and I felt really connected and I love nature. And from there, I went to study forest and nature conservation at Wageningen University, where I discovered I also loved teaching. And so after doing that, I joined the teacher training program. And so since then, I've always looked for opportunities to combine the two. How can I be and a teacher and combine having an impact on protecting nature, conserving nature, having a more sustainable world? And
Mm.
so I feel super grateful to have that ability in my job as a teacher, but also outside of school as a teacher trainer to be able to do that.
Mm. That's beautiful. And I love that you can combine two of your passions, right? Sometimes I think people struggle to find a little bit what is their purpose or what is their passion. And sometimes it's not clear for them, right? And for you You have managed to figure that out. And for me, it was also a journey. And sometimes those things change over time, but it
Yeah.
sounds like it's really solidified for you. And as you say, it's very gratifying and fulfilling from a personal level
Yeah.
to be able to combine those two. We use the word sustainability. We often think of things like carbon footprint and maybe the climate crisis. But we decided that we wanted to look at the word transformation
Mm.
and include people
Yeah.
in this equation. And so you also mentioned in your quote that, this is an ecological climate crisis that our world faces today. This is a journey of transformation. What do you mean?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because, of course, those are big words. What I think needs to transform is the way we view ourselves as part of the world and the way we see life as a good life, right? The way we see our lives as positive. So I think this is why behind me, you see the whole school approach as Teachers for Climate, which is a group of teachers who want to use education to create a more sustainable world and help other teachers teach for sustainability. For us, the vision is planetary citizenship. So we use
Mm.
education to reach planetary citizenship, and that's the transformation that I think needs to happen, where we as people realize that we are part of a global ecosystem
Mm.
where we live together with animals and trees and other people, but also with the non living world, right? The air, water, the soil. And everything we do has an impact. And we need to act as that's the transformation I think needs to happen. And I think that starts with that realization of connection, that we are indeed connected to people everywhere around the world, but not just people. And I think young kids have this automatically. The relationship children have with animals is so clear, right? The love for animals is instantly there. And we somehow later on seem to disconnect ourselves from animals. We're different because we can speak, and therefore we think we are disconnected. Whereas I think if we can tap into that initial connection that children feel, and that I think we still have, we realize that more.
I'm assuming that the mindset that we currently have, or that most of us have, is this idea of separation. I'm separate from nature, I'm separate from animals. And I would even dare to say, like, sometimes I'm separate from certain people
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
certain groups. The transformation that needs to happen then is realizing that we are all part of the same world. It's interesting that you also bring up the non living,
Mm,
are the actual home, the environment where we live in.
yeah,
So the big question is then, how do we transform
yeah,
this mindset? Because it's actually, I mean, talking about mindset, but you use the word feeling.
yeah, yeah. I think
How do we feel that we're
that's it.
part of this bigger connection, this web, that we truly are interconnected, that the air that the factory emits is the air that I breathe, is the air that goes to my fetus, in my belly, or something like that. How do we feel that? So not only the cognitive.
Yeah, and that's an essential part, right? And I think traditionally in education there was not a lot of space for feeling or for
Mm.
acknowledging our feelings because we of course all feel all the time, but it's not necessarily acknowledged in schools or in lessons. And I think that's an essential part of learning for sustainability, of that transformation that's needed, is to make our emotions a part of that process.
Mm.
And neurological research also shows, and I think as teachers we know this, if we can engage the emotions of our students, we know learning will take place and there's engagement. And there's ideas, there's questions popping up. And we know if students aren't touched emotionally, it's very difficult to engage. And the same goes for us, I guess, as
Yeah. I mean, that's what marketeers do all the time, right? They touch our emotions.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
if we're not touched emotionally, we don't engage.
we don't engage and nothing happens. So I think the space needs to be created for that, to allow that. And I also think in order to connect with nature, we need to go outside. There needs to be time to learn in nature and with nature and from nature. And then to realize we are nature. But also, like you said, right, we sometimes feel disconnected from other people. Let's learn with the community outside of school. We're not isolated from the world, we are part of the world. So that authentic learning with the local community, or maybe even the global community, is a real essential part, I think, of learning for sustainability. That helps
Mm.
bring that engagement, but also therefore helps bring that transformation around. Yeah.
And so you traveled for a year, right? You took time off and spent probably a lot of money to go visit and find inspiring examples. Tell us a little bit about this journey and what you learned.
My partner and I had the desire to travel, see more, I guess, find more inspiration. And so we connected with organizations and people in Europe that were great examples. We traveled from Scandinavia all the way down to Italy, Spain, and Portugal, visiting really inspiring people and inspiring organizations with cool examples. And along the way, also created a network of teachers to work with who have the same mission. And you also asked me, what is a great example that you encountered? It's very difficult to limit it to one example, but I think I'll share two shortly because we're talking about structurally improving
Mhm.
education or structurally integrating sustainability in education. I was really impressed by Slovenia, the country, and how they did this. They've got spectacular nature. Slovenia, if you've ever been, it's beautiful. And they have incorporated this in their national curriculum in an experiential way. So, part of their national curriculum is that every child in the first 9 years of their education needs to have 2 weeks of learning outside. And it's not just written there, they support it with outdoor learning centers who are staffed by specialized teachers who know how to do this. But on top of that, they also support their normal classroom teachers with training how to incorporate learning outside in their own lessons. And it was really fun and
Wow.
inspiring to be part of that. Like I met a mathematics teacher who had set up this whole program of learning maths outside, like
Yeah.
with things you find in the forest, create all these mathematical shapes and do measurements with that. And I thought it was so innovative. And I loved that the country really integrated this. This is important to us, and we make it part of what every child needs to have access to. So I loved that. And in Spain, I contacted Teachers for Future in Spain, and they really blew me away in their proactiveness. So they had written, the government had created a new curriculum. In the Netherlands, we're also busy in writing new curriculum. And the government had actually published it, and the Teachers for Future had looked at it and said, well, there's no sustainability in here. We're going to redo that. So they got together with 120 teachers from all over the country during COVID, so they could all meet online, rewrote the curriculum to integrate sustainability in every subject, in every year level. And they handed it back to the government and said, there you go. And they
No
actually,
excuses.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they took
Wow.
a lot of that and actually implemented in the national curriculum. So that was a cool action. And one of those teachers invited me to their school because if you're listening now and you're a teacher, you're like, well, that's a bit big. He, together with his students, designed a water collection system because Spain, in certain areas, really suffers from drought and increasing temperatures are already very noticeable for them. Their school became hotter for longer and harder to work in, to study in. And their school playground was all concrete, so extra hot. So they planted trees. They created a water collection system where they collected the water from the basins in the toilets, cleaned it, and used it to actually water the trees. It was more like a vocational high school. So it was perfect
Mhm.
hands on. What do we learn and how can we implement it to instantly make our own school more sustainable?
Wow. So the students are seeing that experience of hands-on solutions in their own local community, literally in their school.
And how they
That
can contribute. That's
exactly.
essential.
Wieneke, what's the difference between, kind of traditional school? Because uh, at least the one that you and I know, the international education, right? There's a lot of schools that have these outdoor programs for a
Mm.
week. What would be the difference, for example, between something that an international school does, this week without walls or something like that, and what Slovenia is doing?
I think to make it really explicit that you can learn in and from nature.
Mm.
But I wouldn't dismiss what a lot of international schools do in going outside and weeks without walls and the value of that. I do think they're very valuable, and I do think people working in international schools or learning in international schools are quite lucky with all the possibilities there.
Mm. Yeah, because a lot of schools, local and international, are found in big cities.
Yeah.
There isn't that much nature around. So how would you integrate then this idea of going out into nature, which we know is necessary for that emotional connection and engagement, for that mindset transformation, if your school is
Hmm.
in
And
this
this
big city?
nature doesn't need to be like a virgin forest.
Mm.
So perhaps it can also be smaller. I loved visiting a school last week where they were teaching for sustainability, and every child got a small plant sapling and had to care for it
Oh,
for a
nice.
year. And I thought, actually, that forms the connection, right? You've kept this
Yes.
creature, this live organism, and it's your responsibility that it grows. That I love that small way to teach about life.
And I think that's also something that we need to remember. There's actually a lot of nature
Mm.
in cities. We
Yeah,
just don't see it. We don't look for it, right? So if we actually spend some time on a sidewalk,
yeah.
we do see some ants. We do see a little weed popping up through the tiles or something like that, right?
It's a really nice example of what you can do as a teacher. I try to do this with my classes, go into this tiny little nature area next to our school and just give them time to find something that they find interesting or beautiful. And all of a sudden, when everybody slows down and really takes the time to look at it, a student said, actually, I walk past this every day and I don't really notice it. But now that I've taken the time, I realize there's a whole community. There's so much more. There's little insects, there's flowers, there's things I'd never seen before. And it's a whole world in itself. And I thought that was beautiful.
That is absolutely beautiful. And that's where you see again that emotional connection, I think.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you use the word slowing down.
Hmm.
Because when I do my coaching for sustainable high performance, it's exactly that. It's about slowing down. And then we start to see beauty everywhere, not only in nature, but in people and in our schools. Like I remember one of my clients, she said, after we'd been coaching for a while, and she's like, Karin, you wouldn't believe the beautiful light that shines through my window. Like I'd never seen it before. And it made her so happy. Just something so small. And there's that connection. It was an emotional connection to what she was seeing. And this feeling of gratitude, I think, is also so important, right? Being grateful for the planet and all the resources and the animals and the air and the water. And like we take so much of it for granted.
Yeah.
And then we don't realize it how important it is until the water is polluted or until the air is polluted.
Yeah.
Then we're like, oh, wait a second, you
Yeah.
know, I do need this. I do need to value it. But at the same time, it is for free. So and we
Mhm.
we don't think about it on a daily basis, right?
I love
Yeah.
that you mentioned gratitude because it's often where I start. We know as geography teachers, there's a lot of depressing topics.
Yes.
It is
I'm
hard.
really good at that. I depress the hell out of my students. No.
I know. And I find that difficult. Like, for
Yes.
example, for the non-geography teachers out there, we teach, for example, about climate change, overfishing, deforestation,
Yeah.
um,
Poverty.
and well, take climate change, right? You're talking about what's happening in the world, but inherently we're talking about the future of our students' lives. What will your life be like affected by this? And this is a reality. And I think we can't not discuss that emotional aspect of it. And I use the spiral of active hope, which is a beautiful tool from Joanna Macy and Chris Johnston. And that starts in gratitude. So it
Mm.
grounds everybody in gratitude, making us realize that although there's a lot of things in the world that we are worried about or that we would like to see differently, there's also a lot of beautiful things in our lives now to be grateful for. And that kind of anchors us and
Mhm.
that prevents, in a way, to become too depressed about it all.
So let's talk about that for a moment from your personal perspective, your personal experience.
Mm.
It can get depressing. And there is, this sort of like climate fatigue, and people who work actively in this area sometimes they actually go for therapy and coaching because they just find it all so depressing.
Yeah.
How do you then make sure that you stay that positive person that I know you to be
Mm.
amidst all the problems that we do have?
Yeah. I guess it's a wave, right? I do feel the weight of these
Mm.
problems and the worries and the sadness. And I think there's a lot of different things. I think the gratitude is a part, but also honoring your pain for the world is how Joanna Macy calls it, is an important part because I used to want to not look that way, right? Let's
Mm.
jump to action. What can we do? But it's
Right.
important to acknowledge it because it is there. And once you acknowledge what it is that you're sad or worried about,
Mm.
that can also be your driver, the driving force to taking action. And I think then what helps me, and this is why I want to generate opportunities for my students to experience the same, is find a community and find a way in which you can take action, in which you can contribute to a solution. And those for me are, I guess, the ingredients of coping with all
Mm.
of the knowledge. So it's about finding people so you're not alone in your worry and then seeing how can I contribute. And I am lucky to be working in education because that gives me a lot of ways in which I can contribute.
All right. Anchoring in gratitude, starting from that. And then you also said honoring and acknowledging the pain. And that's so interesting because that's what we do in coaching as well. It's not about ignoring or avoiding the hard feelings. And it's exactly kind of what we started our talk with, is that we need to bring feelings back into the curriculum and also back into our lives. We're so taught, at least in the Western world, to be like, we leave the feelings at the door when we come to work,
Yeah.
right? Or even home. Like culturally, from my family perspective, we never talked about emotions.
Oh, yeah.
It was like a taboo topic. It's just you just get on with things and you just keep going, and that kind of thing. There's no acknowledgement of any kind of pain or distress or grief or anything like that. But the thing is, when we do that, it doesn't go away. It's like this thorn in our side. So I think it's beautiful that you also add that element to acknowledge the pain and get support.
Yeah.
And that is the other thing I think that we forget sometimes in the Western world, is we're taught to be so independent
Yeah.
and strong, and I can do it by myself. And there's almost this taboo of asking for help and support.
Mm.
We're not alone. We don't need to do this alone. But yet there's loneliness epidemic,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
our world. So it's so interesting how we're working on the same things.
Yeah.
You
Really
know,
interesting.
it is super interesting, and that these themes of bringing emotions, acknowledging the emotions, finding community and support, and then taking action because we want to move forward. We don't want to stand still.
Yeah.
That happens in both of these worlds of sustainability, me sort of in my coaching world, but also yours in the educational sustainability world.
And I think students get a lot of, well, people in general, that the feeling of purpose in your life, which I think is a great contributor to happiness, comes from that taking action and finding your community.
And that is, I think, the other thing, the purpose. Figuring out what it is you want to do can be sometimes overwhelming and a big step for people. but at least maybe connecting or finding a community that you enjoy being in and that you can take small actions can be so fulfilling. And so, Wieneke, another interest of mine is this idea of polarities and this yes and approach. Because we often feel like we need to choose between our comfort, having a good life, or the planet.
Hmm.
And so, what are your thoughts about this? How can we choose for and living a good life, not giving up necessarily all of our luxuries or feeling like it's a painful thing to do, and also taking care of the planet?
Yeah, I love that question because I think what we really need is a redefining of what the good life is.
Okay. Tell me more.
Yeah. I'm going from the world as a whole to education. I
Mhm.
think at the moment where a lot of sustainability problems come from is the notion that success and the good life means making lots of money,
Mm.
and that that money can be made through exploiting either people and or nature. And that if you do well and a lot of money is created for short-term interest, that is success. And the money that those things buy, that the things that that money buys, that's going to make us happy. And I think we know that's not true. More stuff doesn't make us happy. In fact, I think it actually makes a lot of people very unhappy. When we go back to asking ourselves, what is a good life? And I think what we spoke about, that purpose, that feeling of belonging and connectedness is what makes us happy. And then the question is, how can we teach for that?
Mm.
I think just like in society, we need to redefine success. In schools and in education, we need to redefine success because we are also teaching students for productivity. There's a lot of deadlines. Students are under enormous pressure to get high grades. For what? For doing a test on your own and getting the right answers? Is that what the world needs? I don't think so. I think we need to re-evaluate what is it that we need for a sustainable, fair planet. And if you ask people this and you give people time to think about this, a lot of people say we need to collaborate, we need
Mm.
empathy, we need to be able to take action, we need to
Mm.
feel connected. If we're teaching for that, then success in school looks very different. Then I think we will need to assess for, did you actually make a difference? How are you collaborating? How can we teach in a collaborative way? And then can a test, rather than being an artificial time pressured questions thing, exam, can this be a real project where you work with other people and the community to make a real difference? And that is your success, and not necessarily externally, but also by yourself. Like, how was that? What did you learn? But that's will require a big difference, a big change. And that's also a transformation I think needed in education.
Wow, that's powerful. I completely agree. Preaching to the choir here, Wieneke. Throughout this, actually, all these interview series that I've been doing over the past couple of months, and a lot of them are educational leaders. And there is this idea that education needs to transform. Our schools, our systems need to transform. The question is a little bit into what and
Yeah.
how.
Hmm.
And then, of course, education is within the bigger system of society and, like, you know, the businesses and higher education and cultural values and all those sort of things, the expectations of, yes, we need to go out, find a job to make more money,
Yeah.
hopefully not get burnt out, but then spend all that money on exploiting our planet, you know.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, I think, for people who have made some sort of a change in their lifestyle, and I'm taking myself as an example. A few years ago, I went vegan. It was actually for very selfish reasons, for health reasons. But then the more I started researching it, the more I realized, oh, well, okay, this is actually not only good for me, it's also good for animals, it's good for the environment. And when people sometimes ask me about why have I done that, or, has it been a sacrifice? It's not at all. It's exactly defining my good life. My good meal is now with no meat or no dairy products, no animal products. Overall, I mean, sometimes I'm not super strict, but in general, I think 90% where I can, it's that. And there is no sacrifice at all. It actually feels more aligned
Yeah.
with who I want to be, what I want to stand for. And I think it's so interesting about thinking, well, what is my good, what does a good meal look like? Or what does success look like? How are you trying to do all these things within the current system that we have, the exams, pressure, and all that kind of stuff? Because it's a bit limiting, but you want to teach for belonging and connection and bring kids out into nature and work collaboratively. Like how practically, how are you doing this now?
Actually, it's not as hard as I think we might think. Obviously, I'm not where I would like it to be, and I don't think our school is where I would like our school to see, or education in general, but we have a lot of leeway, and I think I see education for sustainability as a way to improve education, not rather trying to also force that in. Every subject and every level of education can teach through a certain context, a certain lens, where you can use sustainability issues as a way to teach. Collaborative learning, I mean, the pedagogy behind me actually proves to have a much bigger impact on taking action for sustainability than the curriculum. Whereas I think traditionally we used to think, okay, education for sustainability means we need to teach what sustainability is. But really, the way we teach, for example, teaching outside or teaching collaboratively or having outside organizations to collaborate with, so it's an authentic assignment, have a much bigger impact on that acting for sustainability of our students. And I think if you think about it a bit creatively, there's a lot of ways in which you can teach the things that students need to know for your national curriculum or train them for the exam they need to finish, just in different ways or using a different context. That'll actually not only teach for sustainability, but also improve education.
And I like how that's come out through these talks, and especially the previous speaker, Russ Wenner. Yes, education needs to change, but in the meantime, actually just taking these small steps, right? Small improvements, doing what we can do and not feeling overwhelmed by, oh my God, I need to change everything. So that's also for us personally. What's the one next tiny step that we can make to maybe reduce plastic at home, or maybe eat more vegetarian, or take the bike a little bit more often, right? So it's feeling that we can do something, getting some empowerment and ownership over our own lives, but small steps. I'm mindful of the time, and I would love to invite Maybelline and Farhana to share your thoughts. And if you have any questions for Wieneke or anything's triggered in your mind by our discussion.
Yeah, I just have one question. With the case like sustainability and nature and everything, what if other people don't really necessarily think that this is the way that it should be? How do you actually have them think maybe at least 10% more each time that this would be something that they should think about, or this should be something that they would want to implement in their lives a little bit every time? How do you really say this to people if they don't really care about these things?
Yeah, that's
Great question.
and it's a very relevant one, right? Because it is not regarded as important, even though arguably it is. I think I'd like to start from love. So my question is, what do you love in life? And people say, my children or my family, my dog, things like that. And so the question then is, right, which do you want to care? The love brings the care. And it doesn't matter if it's care for people or for your grandchildren or care for the trees. They have the same foundation, right? Healthy air and healthy food, a stable climate are all important for these things. But you're right. And sometimes I try not to use words like sustainability because some people immediately stop listening. But I think when we dig a little bit deeper, the things we care about require the same things, the same protection. And that's where we usually can find each other.
I love that approach, Wieneke. So it's also then what language and what arguments and what questions do we use to create this belonging and sense of connection to our outside world, our planet, and get the message across. So interesting. All right. And Farhana, do you have any thoughts or questions for Wieneke?
Was that every time I attend your session, and it seems like we are all on the same page. We are thinking the same directions, and our contexts are different probably, but our thinking are the same. One thing when I was listening to all of these things, I was thinking sometimes as I have been working in a school, and as you said, like when people are living in a place where there is no nature, like not that much, just the concrete, sometimes, and now where I'm living, it's absolutely nature, and then children can see the differences. Every nature is changing, how the nature actually, the trees, it's for everything very obvious. It's like they can see that. But my experiences is like sometimes the kids are growing up into this nature, but they don't have the sense of sustainability or how to take care. I have worked in a school where there was nothing. We created a rooftop garden.
Oh, cool.
Okay, a rooftop garden, and I have seen how the children actually get in love of that. So I'm just thinking, what actually makes the children think about like how to, as you say, the love, because it's in my heart. I believe in this world that love can make anything happen in this world. That's my belief. In our school, it's a huge open area, and there are kind of forests, the trees, encouraging the children to play with the sticks, but more creative ways. But there is every day some issues. And then the children, to get more sticks, they are just shaking the trees, breaking the branches. So I had to talk and I said, okay, come someone. I am just shaking you. Are you liking it? Are you feeling hard? And they said, yeah, we are not liking it, Miss Farhana. And I said, exactly, the tree is not liking this because it's also a living thing. You cannot see that. But they have the feelings. So I'm just thinking, how to create that when I'm listening to you. And sometimes we are planting the trees, but it seems like they have an activity. That feelings is not there. What it is, the purpose. Are we not clear to our purposes, as you say, to explain to the kids? I'm just reflecting a lot in my head how that can be more spontaneous, like more authentic ways that can come within us and can transform the school community to think about. It's not like a topic in the curriculum, it's like a everyday life to learn how to take care of our surroundings.
Okay, any thoughts to
Yeah, I
what
loved your
Farhana shared?
reflections. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I loved your examples of basically teaching students empathy for trees. Beautiful. Do you like it? No, the tree doesn't like it either. I think that was a beautiful way of teaching that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so I have given them like the choices today.
I know you also do training and like these platforms that you're part of. If we have teachers or even other people who are passionate about this topic, where can they go
Yeah.
to get training or inspiration, these ideas? And they can't all take a year off and go visit different places.
No,
So,
that's
you know,
good.
what would you suggest for them to do?
Yeah, I think
There's a lot, and I'm going to mention two things that I'm involved in that could help. There's suset.org, and they are a worldwide organization, sustainability education, that organizes both trainings as well as summits for students, teachers, school leaders, people from business, as well as scientists and policymakers to come together to really explore what is happening and what they can do to contribute. That's, I think, a really inspiring way where people come away with like, okay, yes, I'm now inspired to take action and know where to go, as well as giving you a supportive platform and group of people to tap into. We do the Sustainability Accelerator. It takes school teams along a whole year of really making a structural change, a whole school change. Because what we saw on the year travels, and what we also know from our own school practice, schools are good at having a fun project week or a great day or an excursion, but it's much more difficult to make it integrated whole school and part of the curriculum and the way we teach and the school building. And it's not just on the shoulders of one passionate teacher or student, but actually lifted by everybody. So we help schools go through a design thinking journey for a year to really implement changes to make their schools more sustainable. There's Teachers for Climate, which is like a network of teachers that's worldwide. Teachers for Future seems to be the more common name of these teacher-led organizations worldwide. There's a lot of UN worldwide funds, teaching resources available. I'm not actually involved in making more teaching resources because there's a lot out there. We don't need more, you just need to find it. My tip for that is ask yourself, the organization who created the resource, is their main purpose, their main business model, a threat to my students' future or supporting of a student's future? And if it's a threat, I don't want to have anything to do with it, no matter how good or free the resource is.
Can you
Just to
give an
shield
example? What do you mean with that?
oil and gas companies have beautiful resources about
Oh, okay.
renewable energy.
Mm.
And it's free and it looks amazing. And I still don't want this in my classroom because I don't want my students to think, oh, look at that. They're doing amazing stuff, whereas really they're actually wrecking their future.
It's a bit greenwashing.
It's greenwashing.
Yeah. Mm. So, Wieneke, we want to integrate it into the curriculum, the school building, the environment. But what you indicated for Hannah is more this sense of being, right? Coming back to where we started, really, of having this connection that is ingrained, that we wouldn't even start with shaking the tree. It would just be like, of course we don't. Why would we? And that just brings me back to, trying to expose kids to nature as much as possible, the rooftop garden, or even plants in the classroom. I remember one of my clients was this elementary school principal, and one of her pet peeves was all the dead plants in all the classrooms because no one was watering them. So she would go around and, like, she's a principal, she's being paid, to do principal stuff and not like, water plants. But she was like, no, these plants are dying. I have to keep watering them. And then it's so funny. We coached on this. It came up as an example. And then she's like, oh, wait a second. I just need to involve the students, right? It's like, it's so simple, and that would free up her time to do more principal stuff, right? I would also say for Hannah, maybe this idea of it's not going to be perfect. They will shake the trees. And that's what we're there for as well, to engage them in the conversations, exactly what you did. So I think, yeah, as Wieneke said, it was a beautiful example of just having a conversation that hopefully already had an impact with these children, so that next time they won't shake the trees or break off all the branches.
But the kids, at the end of the day, the kids are kids. I feel that too, because this age they will never get back. And these are the things they will also remember. But just to teach them, I enjoy that what they do actually. And when I talk to them, I never take it like, you cannot do that. But I try to make them understand, like feel, like the feelings, feel for it. And you will do that. It's not like my one lecture will stop it or one thing, but at least 10 kids will feel that if we really transform the culture of a school. And that's the area, like you say, the systems, that the whole thing needs to be upside down, that where we want to go. But every school says we are taking one piece, because so many pieces, and then we started it, and we cannot go really in details to it, and then something else is coming on the top, and we remain like surface level for everything. and we cannot achieve where we want to go. And I can see that so much nowadays because so many things are coming on the ways. So we are not concentrating in one thing, not going in depth to really internalize and helping, because these are all habits and habits takes time. Like if we want to change the nature, it takes time, but we don't have the time.
Yeah, but I think, Farhana, I think you've answered your own question, is when we have these small conversations with children, it's starting with love. It's exactly what Wieneke said, right? For how can we approach the situation with love and empathy and curiosity? But also we need visionary leaders like you and like Wieneke to make those changes, to provide focus and vision for schools within the constraints and the opportunities that systems have to offer. So it's just, we need to accept the systems for now, the way they are to a certain extent, right? Work with them. But you're right. I do think schools need to have some focus. So what will the focus be? Is it a theme of belonging, or is it a theme of sustainability? But the interesting thing is, I think they connect. Like we need to do, it's all the same kind of, like as some of the themes that are coming up now too is what this theme of belonging is big now. A lot of people are talking about it. My interpretation of that is also we belong on the planet, people.
Yes.
It is our home. And I just, the one last thing is I also feel, and this is also my mission and part of coaching, is that in order to connect with others and the planet, we need to connect with ourselves. And that means slowing down and figuring out, what do I need? And so that I'm healthy, so that I can figure out my own purpose and contribute and then make those beautiful connections with other people. And I think a big problem nowadays, which is a whole nother podcast, but is that people are suffering. There's a lot of pain and fear, which is surfacing this conflict and this polarity. And so we almost need to start with connecting with ourselves and loving ourselves. Wieneke, any last words?
Yeah, I think the realization that how we treat others is actually a reflection of how we treat ourselves, whether that's a tree or a person. So it's again all
Yeah.
part of the same thing.
Yeah. Well, wonderful. We'll keep working on sustainability in our own ways and perspectives, you know, Farhana as a school leader and you, Wieneke, too, in education, me in coaching. So thank you so much for this, I found, really interesting conversation, and for bringing all your ideas, sharing them so generously with people, for all the hard work you do, Wieneke. We need people like you to bring up these topics so that we can have discussions about this. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for providing a platform to do that. And
All right.
for Maybelline and for
Thank
Anna for
you.
joining, that was really
Yeah.
interesting to talk to you.
Yes.
Thank you as well for coming. So I love that we can then open it up and get some other perspectives and questions. Fantastic. Yeah, so Wieneke is available, and I'll put in all her details in the description, and also, you know, the resources that she suggested that you can go look at. And for anyone who's listening to this as well, if you know of any leaders who want to gain more clarity on their purpose, for them to show up authentically and to achieve the sustainable high performance in order to increase their impact, I'd love to connect with them. And so also subscribe to my podcast so that you don't miss another speaker. All right, people, thank you so much for being here, your energy, and take care. Have a lovely day, evening, wherever you're calling from.